The first thing that we want to mention is this course right here is specific to Frymaster equipment, okay? But it does not authorize you to represent us as like a warranty agent or anything like this. This does not make you an authorized service technician, okay? This here is just for information. Now, the companies that are authorized technicians are required to, go ahead and have their technicians, take some of our training. Now, you do get credit for that, but it does not, as an individual or a company, authorize you to work on our equipment on our behalf. Okay, if you could just go ahead and read through that real quick. Anybody that's ever taken a course of mine that I have those hold harmless clauses that I ask people to sign, that aren't working for authorized companies. This is the same thing as that. Again, it just does not authorize you to, as a Frymaster technician. All right, what we're going to talk about today is filtration systems. Okay, we're going to talk about the basic ones that came out in the early set or the mid to late 70s. Hey, somebody needs to go ahead and hit mute on your.
Huh?
Yeah, if you could go ahead and mute your speaker, 'cause we're getting a lot of feedback. Whoever just came on last. All right, but we came out with filtration back in the or a built-in filtration. There's always been filtration, even back in the 30s when Frymaster came about. There was cone filters and things like that. They were just gravity fed, but the actual filtration that we know of now, that's built in with a pump and motor, and that all came about in the late 70s. All right, when it became widespread, and everything has been pretty much the same or pretty basic since then. All right, the basic concept of how filtering works is hasn't really changed a whole lot. The issues that we have with filtration have not changed a whole lot. We're gonna by the end of this, we're gonna get into the fryers that we have that it has the push button filtration where you have actuators open and close the valves and turns the pump on. But the actual issues that we deal with are very much the same as they've always been. And I'm not trying to pass the buck on somebody else saying that none of this is our fault or whatever, but that's not the point. But a lot of it is operational issues. All right. The basic concept of filtering is we have a pre-filter, which we call a crumb tray. Okay. That goes in to catch the big debris and stuff. That's just to keep it off the filter medium, whatever you use, whether it's paper, pad, or whatever. We have a hold down ring that does just that, holds down the paper. Okay. Then we have a screen, what we call a Santa grid or whatever, on the bottom here. Okay. And that's just to have the paper hold up. There's a small hole in the bottom of this, okay, where the oil goes down through. Okay. That screen sits on top of there. So now instead of that small hole being the filtering area, now we have that whole screen. Okay. And if we didn't have that screen there, whenever the crumbs and debris would build up here, okay, where that small hole is, where the oil gets sucked through, once that got clogged up, then it's just going to go ahead and rip through that paper. That's what the screen is for. That's just to hold it up. There's a lot of confusion with people thinking that this is just a pre-filter and they lay it on top of the paper, and that obviously is not the case. Okay, so we just need to make sure that all of these components are in place. Even though they're all simple in design, they're all very important. We do need to inspect the equipment to make sure that it's okay. The main thing that we need to do as far as inspecting it is make sure that all of this stuff is flat. Hey, Roger, can you see if somebody else needs mute? I forget that you can't hear, but we need to set this on a flat surface, okay, and just make sure it doesn't teeter, okay, because if it did teeter, meaning that it's bent and it could be dropped or whatever, even though these things are made out of some pretty strong stainless steel, but if they get bent to where that they're not holding that paper down, what we're going to do is create a path of least resistance where the debris and stuff can go in under this and in under the paper. Okay, now that debris is going to get into the system, and the system being the pump, the pump and all the lines and stuff that creates all the problems where this stuff's got to be cleaned out. All right, working on filter issues is not the ideal service call that we like to go on. All right, so but anyway, the one rule that I always tell people, customers, technicians, whatever, in all the classes I do, one rule that people need to remember in filtering to keep them out of trouble: anything that goes into this filter pan cannot leave that filter pan unless it goes through the filter medium, whatever it is, whether it's a pad, paper, or whatever. All right, it has to go through here. So when you're inspecting this pan after you have it set up, make sure that you have all the areas okay, covered with this filter medium, only allowing one way for that oil to leave that pan, and that's to go through the paper or the pad or whatever you're using for a filter medium. Having the correct size of filter paper is very important. We want to have that paper at least an inch or two bigger than this hold down ring, so it creates kind of like a coffee filter effect where all that debris is going to be caught down in there. Not only is it good to make sure that all the stuff goes through the paper, but also it makes cleanup a lot easier. That's the benefit of paper over a pad, is the cleanup's easier because you can gather these sides or these corners up, okay, and then just take it out in like one package deal. All right. Also with the screen, make sure that that stays nice and flat. If it's got bent and if this thing gets dropped or whatever, and we got these corners sticking up, it'll rip into that paper and tear it, again, creating a path of least resistance. When you're working with the filter pan, and the reason I use this is an old design, but this here is just to say that we've had a lot of different designs of filter pans over the years. All right, I mean a lot of different designs. They all work the same. And again, the one rule that we need to follow is anything that goes in that pan can only leave going through the filter medium, whatever it is. All right. The other thing, though, is make sure that that pan here stays dry. If we have water down here, and you know, it's not a problem washing these pans out. I know people that put them in dishwashers. We do that here. You can do that, but make sure, especially when we have like a sump down here that has a pipe that goes through there or a line that goes through there, they tend to hold water. And if we don't have that pan sitting to where that stuff can drain out, that water is going to be held in there. If you got water in here and we're getting ready to dump oil that's got to be at least 300 degrees, okay? Most times it's going to be cooking temperature, which is usually 350. If you got 350-degree oil coming in contact with water, everybody knows what's going to happen. All right. What happens is you know the worst thing that's going to happen is all that oil is going to boil out over. The least thing that would happen is that water down here is going to expand because it's going to boil at 212, and then that paper comes up, and then all that debris is now down in there, creating a big mess to clean up. All right, we have to make sure that that pan is dry before we start to filter. All right, a good rule of thumb is if they wash it out at night, make sure that it sits overnight to dry out, and make sure it sits in a manner that all the water can drain out. If it's sitting, you know, upright like this, you know, in that sump down here that has that pipe that you can't see or that line that you can't see, all that water is still trapped in there. All right. This right here, the Crumb screen, not much to go wrong with that other than the fact that it breaks. If it wasn't there, okay, I mean, obviously, you know, we're just going to go through a lot more paper. The other thing, though, that this helps prevent is when that oil drains down, it doesn't have a direct impact or as much impact on the paper. All right, that oil comes down at 350 degrees at a pretty good force. Okay, and if it hits that paper, it tends to sometimes raise it up. This acts as like a deflector. Okay, so that's what makes this nice. This here is a little bit older design, although we still have some like this. It's similar. The Crumb screens now are about the size of the pan. Okay, and that's only, and they all angled down. So all this debris, instead of being here right under the spout, it all ends up down here. This right here is going to cause an issue with splashing. Right. But this right here, when the oil comes down, it's going to hit this debris and then it's going to splash out. Okay, and people have probably seen that before. That's why the Crumb screens now are angled down, especially now with the fryers that we have where we got to do a lot more filtering. And if this was allowed to splash out, it tends to build up with a lot of oil. All right, this here is pretty common looking here. All right, obviously you guys have probably worked on these things and seen sometimes where the debris is 2-3 inches thick and it's still pump's still pulling stuff through there, but that's not an ideal situation. All right, one question that we get asked a lot is how often you change the filter paper. You know, it goes on store in the volume. The rule of thumb that we pretty much go with is if you're a 3 million plus store. Now that's a real generic way of putting it because you know people that cook different products, but in your fast food restaurants where you know fries, chicken products, you know pretty much pre-breaded, we say if it's $3 million, then we change it twice a day. If it's over $3 million, anything less than that, yeah, one paper, one pad a day is all we need, and that's pretty much a standard. Okay, that can change a little bit. You know, it depends on the store. You may have a store that cooks, you know, sells more products. It's a little bit more heavily breaded than other stores. And, you know, of course, you have to tweak it. The general rule of thumb, though, is once a day unless you're over $3 million. All right, this right here is the Santa grid or the screen. Okay, and again, we just need to make sure this is flat and it's down below. That's just to hold the paper up. All right. The Frymaster, whenever you get a fryer, unless it's a chain that has a different product spec'd out, you know, just for an example, McDonald's, they don't use our filter paper and powder. They have a filter pad. And it's all just preference on what you use. Which one is better? You know, I think that this has some benefits, but, you know, and I've been told, and there's been a lot of studies done, that the pad actually does a better job of cleaning the oil. Okay. Again, we sell paper and powder, you know, or filtering products, but, you know, we have people that make those for us. So it just depends what customers like. But anyway, ours comes with a paper and powder. Make sure that that paper is bigger than that hold down ring. You want to have it up all around the edges. You know, just think of a coffee filter. All right. We then put the powder on there. The paper is going to take out the big particles. Okay. When I say big, I mean, but particles. You know, this is about the density of a filter or a coffee filter. So it'll take out all the particulate, you know, that could be caught in that. The powder, what it does is it takes like the amino acids and things like that, and it, you know, instead of it being a liquid, it forms into a solid that can be picked up through this paper. All right, those amino acids and those fats and things like that is what puts a flavor into the oil that we don't want. Okay, I mean, some of that, you know, some people, you know, they cook in their oil to give it, you know, season the oil. But for the most part, we want the oil to be, because those recipes on the oil, or, you know, the combinations on the oil, is based on customers' preference. So we want to keep that as pure as we can. That's what the powder does. All right. The powder is basically, it's ground up seashells. All right. And that's the main ingredient in this. And what that, again, what that does is it's going to go ahead and be able to act as like a clarifier, where it'll take liquids and smaller stuff and make it big enough to be caught into the filter paper. All right, this right here, these two quick reference cards are comes with the fryers. This one here would be for a Love fryer or a McDonald's fryer that that you would have. You know, Love fryers are, you know, specifically for McDonald's, and they use filter pads. So this one here is based on that. This here is for a filter quick or a standard fryer or general market fryer that uses paper. Okay, and as you can see here, that screen's much bigger than that other one I showed you, and it's got a trough here where a low point where it's not going to be here where the downspout is, and then all that stuff builds up to where it would splash out over. All right. This here just walks people through if they forget how to load these things up. Again, make sure that they know the one rule is everything's got to go through that paper in order to leave that pan. Okay, unless they dump it out the top. And then make sure that this here stays clean. All right, because if it doesn't, that's going to cause splashing on both of these here. You see how big these crumb trays are now. All right. What we have now is a video I'm going to go ahead and show on how to prepare the filter pan. All right, we're going to go ahead and play this.
Remove the pan
if
and
you don't
remove
hear
the
the volume, go ahead and send something
Empty
in
the
that
crumb
chat.
tray into a fireproof container. Wipe down the other components. Clear debris and oil from the pan. Reassemble the pan. The centigrade screen goes in first. Place the hold-down ring on filter paper and lift the two into the pan. Ensure the filter paper rides up on the wall of the filter pan. Add filter powder to the pan. Return the clean crumb tray to the filter pan. Return the pan to the fryer.
All right. Those videos that are the videos that I'm going to show you, those are available on our website and also on YouTube. So if you're going out, if you're somebody that goes out and does the training or does a startup on a fryer, and you're showing people how to use this stuff, make sure that they know where to go to. You go over a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of startups in the 20 plus years that I've been here, and you go over so much stuff. And with the fryers now, some of the customers that were selling the newer style fryers, and I'll show you those here in a little bit, where they have the automatic filtration, a lot of this stuff is new. Okay, the other stuff, most people are familiar with it, but a lot of stuff that we go over now is new. make sure that they know where these videos are, because they got a lot of information they're trying to take in a short amount of time while they're doing other stuff at the same time. You know, they're getting ready to open up for the day and whatever. So they have a whole list of things that they got to do, plus, you know, try to learn a new piece of equipment. Make sure that they know where these videos are, okay? Because they can be very helpful. Most people have a smartphone. They can just go on their phone and then just reference them. Like I said, we got a YouTube channel. I mean, you know, anybody that's a technician, I mean, I know, you know, people that are mechanics, technicians, whatever, they rely on YouTube on how to fix things. There's a lot of information on there. We have our own YouTube channel for that very reason, and we try to post a lot of stuff. If you have suggestions of videos that you would like, we do pretty good about getting those out there. We went through our list of different warranty jobs and stuff that we have and tried to make a video for all of those. But if you have, you know, that email that I gave you earlier, go ahead and send us an email, and we can go ahead and get those done as we get to them. Another video that we have here is filtering. It's not that long, so we're going to go ahead and go through this. There's a couple of things that this doesn't address on here that we'll talk about after we're done with this.
Filtering. With the oil at cooking temperature, turn the gas valve knob to pilot. After ensuring the filter is prepared for filtering, open the drain valve. Oil drains from the fry pot. With the fry pot empty and the drain valve open, turn the return valve handle. The pump comes on and oil returns from the filter pan to the fry pot and flows out the open drain. Allow the oil to flow in this manner for 5 minutes. Close the drain valve. Oil rises in the fry pot. Oil will bubble as the filter pan empties. Allow the bubbling to continue 10 to 15 seconds to clear the return manifold. Close the return valve, which shuts off the pump.
Okay, on that, there's just a couple of things I think little, let's call them little tricks that pick up over the years. On there, it tells you to go ahead and open the drain valve, okay, and then drain the oil, and then turn the pump on. Always turn the pump on first before you drain any oil to make sure it comes on. Because the last thing you want to do is to go in and empty all that oil out, which in the older fryers like this one was here, you have 50 pounds of shortening is now down in that filter pan. If the pump doesn't come on and now we got to start troubleshooting or whatever, now we got 50 pounds of 350-degree oil that we got to work around. All right. Always turn the pump on first, meaning that yellow handle, turn that on, and just to make sure you hear the pump come on. You'll also see bubbles in the fry pot. That the bubbles are indicating that the pump is at least pumping air. All right. And also what that's doing at the time is it's stirring all that oil up. If you notice at the end there where you still had some debris that was in that on the fry pot, what that'll do is it'll break all that up and a lot more stuff will drain down. All right. And then when you do open the drain valve, don't open the drain valve and drain all the oil out. Go ahead and drain just a little bit of it out. Turn the pump back on and make sure that comes back. Because even though we're getting air in there, we may have, you know, it could be something as simple as an O-ring, could be a crack in the pickup tube. You know, that's the line that connects the filter pan to the fryer. If there's a crack in there or something, we'll get air back, but we're not going to pump oil. Make sure that we pump that little bit of oil back before we drop it all. Okay. So that way, you know, worst case scenario, you'll have an inch of oil in that filter pan, but not the whole thing full. Because you guys that are technicians, I'm sure that you've gone out. If you worked on a filter system, you go out and that filter pan is always going to be full because that's the reason you're out there. If you're there to work on the filter, it's because the oil wouldn't come back. All right. So just go ahead and make sure that people know that. There's no need to drop all of it until we assure that that filter is working. All right. Just a couple of things here that, you know, this has been, ever since I've been here, these have been the top issues that we've had on filtering. And again, I'm not saying that it's always, you know, operational error and, you know, that nothing ever happens with our filters. But the thing of it is, a lot of it is operational error. All right. One thing is about filtering. I mean, it's kind of an intimidating job because when you open them valves, you got 50 pounds or, you know, what's that, about 8 pounds of 8 gallons of shortening. Okay. That's 350 degrees getting ready to come out. Okay. It is an intimidating job. All right. So a lot of times, I mean, people take shortcuts or whatever. A lot of times this is a job that's done at the last thing that gets done before you go home. So sometimes people cut corners and things like that. When we came out with the newer fryers that we have that have push button filtering on it, which we're going to talk about here next. When we came out with those, after about a year, we wanted to find out what the top issues that we were having with them. And even though we added actuators, push buttons, more sophisticated controllers, the top issues that we had with filtering with those were the same as the ones that we had before. This list right here was almost identical, okay? The new fryers that we're talking about are these here, okay? We have the Love Fryer, which stands for low oil volume. Anybody that wants to learn more about those, the next 2 days, we're going to have a, well, 2 hours total. Tomorrow and the next day, we're going to have a part 1 and part 2 course on these fryers and the basic operations of these things. But just quick right now, what we did is we designed a fryer. Hey, Roger, we got somebody on. Thanks. But hey, guys, make sure you stay on mute, okay? But we designed a fryer because we had an issue. Well, I mean, the world had an issue back in mid 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, in that time frame there. Prices of resources just went through the roof. Okay, unlike now where they all plummeted, but the cost of oil really went up. I mean, it doubled in price. All right, so when you got restaurants out there that rely on oil to cook their food, okay, and it's the #1 condiment in a fast food restaurant. And a condiment is just something that you use to support the product you sell. Okay, you don't sell oil. All right, at the end of the day, you're not, somebody's coming in to buy that. You need that just to prepare the food, but it's the #1 cost. Okay, other than the products they actually sell. So whenever that doubled in price, I mean, obviously it got people's attention. So what they did is come up with a concept, okay, on how to save oil. Okay, and it's the Love Fryers. That's as far as we're going to go into it today. Tune in tomorrow and Thursday, and then we'll go ahead and cover that whole concept. But what it required is for you to filter a lot more often. Okay, not so much filter, but we have to flush out the fryers a lot more often. Okay, so it's very important. Okay, that those operational things that that we had in the past, that we make sure that we get people on board and make sure that all those things are addressed and we don't have those issues because we are filtering more often now. All right, the whole concept behind these is this was a standard fry pot. This size fry pot with the BTU rating, or if it's electric, the KW rating, okay, the size and that heating capacity was based on the fact that we had to cook 70 pounds of product per hour. And I don't want to say product, let's say it's French fries. But 70 pounds of fries per hour is what we based the size of the fry pot and the heating capacity, okay? So any major chain, that's the rule of thumb, 70 pounds of fries per hour. That's what it's based on. In order to do that, okay, prior to, the Love Fryers that came out in 2009, prior to that, we had a 50-pound fry pot, okay, which had 3 sections in it. We had the cooking area, we had the heat transfer area, and we had the cold zone. And if it's an electric fryer, the electric fryers, they look more like it's just a flat fry pot, but the area below the elements would have been the cold zone. Okay, so this held 50 pounds of shortening. All right, whenever they decided that we needed to come up with a concept to save oil, what they did is, because we couldn't eliminate, the things that break oil down, the heat, the light, and things like that. I mean, because you're using them. All right, so what they did, instead of reducing heat because you have to cook the product, they just reduced the amount of oil that we're going to have exposed to that. And that's what they did, is they took this fry pot that had 50 pounds of shortening and came up with this fry pot that only had 30. The only area that we could get rid of was the cold zone. This area here may look like a cold zone, but it is not. All right, the temperature here, here, and here is all very similar. All right, I know some of you guys are probably thinking, well, the burners slide in here. This would be the heat transfer area. But no, the way this fry pot is designed, and with the blower motor and the plenum and everything on there, the heat is concentrated here. That's why these baffles are here, so that heat slows down in this area, and this is where the heat transfers into the fry pot. The cooking area and this heat transfer area, or buffer area, whatever you want to refer to it as, those couldn't change. I mean, that was going to stay the same. The area that we looked at getting rid of was this. The concept behind Frymaster fryers previously was we had this big garbage can that was a lot lower temperature to store all the debris to keep it away from the cooking area and keep it away from the heat transfer area so that it would stop cooking and it would be down here and not get on the product. All right. When we got rid of that heat transfer or that cold zone or the garbage can, when we got rid of it, okay, that just means now we have to take that garbage out more often. Okay. There's a little area here. But again, this is not a cold zone. Whatever drops down in here is going to continue to cook. And I'm going to show you some pictures of that here in a little bit of what it looks like after a very short time. All right, just imagine having a skillet on the stove, all right, and put some debris in there. That debris falls down to the bottom. It continues to cook. All right, what that would look like in an hour or two. Okay, and that's the same thing that happens here. And a lot of you guys have probably seen that before. All right, but that's the whole design behind that. All right. With that said, in here, this just shows the difference in sizes and things like that. And with you know, because we have to filter a lot more often, we didn't want to have it too labor intense. So that's when all the push button, the actuators that that open and close the drain valve and the return valves, and the devices that turns the pump motor on to start the pump or the pumping or process, all that's automated now. That's the reason for that. All right, because before it used to be when we had the big fry pots, you know, or when we had the big cold zone area, we would have somebody would come in. Normally, it was an individual come in just to do the filtering. Okay, a lot of stores were like that, or you'd say have somebody on staff, but there would be a filter person that would come in and do just that. You know, and people, you know, get dressed up with the apron on and the face shield and the big gloves and things like that. This is not the same process. We still do that once a day to clean the vats, but the process of just flushing this out is just that. We just press a button, okay? That process, okay, whenever you get to a certain amount of cooks. So I'll just use an example, you know, of a chain that's been using this the longest, which is McDonald's. McDonald's, after every 12 batches of French fries, the fryer is going to say filter now. This is actually an M3000 controller, and this is what it's going to say. It'll say filter now. And it'll scroll between yes and then no. The check mark, and one is yes, and then two is no. At that point, you have to press a button, okay? You either press the one or you press the two. Either way, you're pressing a button. We want to make sure that whenever it says filter now, that we're pressing the right button, okay? I mean, the one that's on the left, but the correct button, which is number one, all right? That is all they'll have to do. Now, it does ask you to skim the vat, and I'm going to show you that here in a second, but it'll ask you to skim the vat and things like that, but that's very simple. There's just a container that's on the door. You just take the big stuff off the top. To be honest with you, if they skip that step, it would not be the end of the world, all right? Basically, though, we just want to press the button. One thing that, and we'll go over it a little bit more tomorrow, but the one thing that you got to make sure people know, though, that is it. That's all you got to do. But before you press that button for the first time that day when you're coming on shift, before you do that for the first time, make sure they pull the pan out. One, make sure the filter paper's loaded properly. Now, we all know how to do that because we've already gone through that here today, and you know that there's videos online to show people how to do that, all right? But we have to make sure that there's a filter pad or paper, whatever they have in there, in accordance with those sheets and stuff that I showed John here that come with the fryer, and we need to make sure that there's no oil in there. On these fryers, and we'll talk about that tomorrow and on Thursday, but on these fryers, they keep inventory of the oil. But if somebody lies to it, then they don't know where the oil is, okay? If they ask you, is the vat full, and then as you pull the pan out and says, is there oil in the pan, and you say no and there is, it's going to allow you to filter because you told it everything was okay. So we need to make sure before you come on shift, or if you're out there working on one and you need to filter to, you know, just to run through that, make sure that you check that that pan is ready to get that oil, because once it starts, it's not going to stop, okay? It keeps inventory of the oil only if you don't lie to it, all right? But other than that, when it says filter now like this, all you do is press the button. That's it, okay? And like I tell people all the time, it's no more work to do that than it would be to tell it no. But yet I'm in stores. I was just in one 2 weeks ago on a test unit that we have here local, and I know while I was there, they pressed no at least 3 times, and I was there for just a short time. Every time it said filter now, they just overrode it. And we need to make sure that they don't do that. All right. This is a video here of that process.
Responding yes to the filter now prompt. When the fryer reaches a preset cook count, the computer will prompt the launch of an automatic filter cycle. The computer displays filter now, alternating with yes, no. A blue LED is illuminated. Press the 1 checkmark button for a yes response. The computer displays skim vat. Use the skimmer to remove debris from the fry vat about to be filtered. The computer display will shift from skim vat to confirm filter, alternating with yes, no. Press the 1 checkmark button. The computer displays draining and oil drains from the fry pot. Oil is returned to the fry pot through ports in the back of the pot, washing debris to the open drain. The drain closes and oil rises in the pot. The oil will bubble as the fry pot fills. The computer display changes from filling to low temp, returning to the previous cooking setting when the oil is at set. Responding yes to the filter now prompt.
Okay, yeah, it was at the end of it. I don't know why it got a little fuzzy there, but it was at the end of that. I mean, that's the whole process right there. That process, how long does it take? I mean, obviously that video didn't show the whole thing why it was pumping. 4 minutes. As a matter of fact, I think the exact time is 4 minutes and 2 seconds. I seen that on a poster here where they were comparing different brands of fryers, and ours came in at 4 minutes and 2 seconds. Whenever these fryers were designed, one of the things was, it's like, look, okay, we'll do that, but we can't, have the guy get dressed out and, come over and do that long filter process that took a fair amount of time. All right, so they said, look, we can do it, but it's 4 minutes. Again, you got to keep in mind, all we want to do is flush out that debris, and that's all we got to do. Even though it's so simple, okay, I'm sure anybody that's ever worked on one of these fryers knows that still that is being bypassed so much. And then when you get there, you're always going to be told the same thing. It's like, we filter every time it tells us to. All right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been in that situation, or there's been expensive repairs that needed to be done, and it was because we weren't filtering. If they were used to filtering once a day, now that they have to filter a lot more often, what's a lot more often? Or if they say, well, we filter a lot. If they filtered once a day before, now they filter 3 times a day. And in their mind, that may be a lot. Okay, but it's not as much as we need to. And again, this is more of a flushing process than it is actually filtering. In our controllers, okay, all our controllers, they store how many times you tell it no or you bypass filter. Okay, and it tells you how many times that they do filter. All right. We have sheets made up, and they're online, okay, and it has step-by-step instructions depending on the fryer that you got. Whether you have a touchscreen fryer, the Filter Quick fryer, or a Love fryer, they have step-by-step instructions. Every class I do, one of the things that they have to do before they can get a certificate is get this sheet and go up there and pull the filter stats out of the mock-ups that I have. All right, and I've never had anybody that has not been able to do it just using this sheet. Not only is this a good tool for technicians to use, okay, also I can tell you managers love this because, that the money that they save on oil, and this is a concept that has been proven by customers, other our competitors that make these fryers. I mean, this is a proven concept, okay? So anybody that says that this isn't going to work, we're too busy, I can tell you that's not the case. I've been in the busiest restaurants in all chains. Okay, and it does work, and it will save money. Managers, once they learn that, and there's been so many times over the last 10 years that I've worked with people, and other people here in the service part has worked with people. When they started using this properly, I mean, they'll just let us know how much money they're saving on oil, how much better the product is. Okay, and it doesn't have any impact in their operation. So managers are very curious about this information here. So you can go into the controllers, which I got a video here to show you how to do that. You can go into the controllers and capture all that information. Now that we started pushing back a little bit on warranty and saying, look, if you choose not to use these properly and it's going to result in service calls, that's not something that we can continue to absorb. We had a little leeway in the beginning because, there's some growing pains, there's a learning curve. But now that these been out there, even the general market ones have been out there now for 6 years. They were released in 2014. Okay, either you're going to use these properly or you're going to choose not to. And again, it's your product, it's your, restaurant. You can do what you want with it. But the thing of it is we're not going to be able to continue to keep concessioning repairs on this because it is just 100% wasted money. And we don't want the end users to waste money, and we don't want to waste money ourselves. So to prevent that, all we got to do is press the right button when it calls for it. If we think that it's not being filtered properly, this is how you would go in and get the filter stats. In order to get paid on a warranty call, we need to have the filter stats. All right, I'm going to start this video, and I think I allowed enough time to go ahead and run it through. It tells you how to get the filter stats and the error codes, which is useful too in troubleshooting. We're not going to cover that today, but I'm going to show you how to get all that with this video.
Frymaster's LOV fryers with M3000 controllers, Filter Quick models with 3000 series controllers, and Filter Quick fryers with FQ 4000 controllers all have retrievable data that show how frequently the fryer was filtered and if requested automatic filter cycles were bypassed. They also record error logs. Gathering this data is important in pursuing the root cause of recurring filter issues in a restaurant. Failure to filter regularly and bypassing filter prompts leads to clogged filter pans, clogged inline filters, and needless service calls. On all filter-related calls on these fryers, use these steps to gather the filter statistics. Frymaster has downloadable forms with instructions for the capture of the data. Press and hold the Info button for 3 seconds. Info mode, followed by Filter Stats, scrolls on the left screen. Press the checkmark button under the number 1 button. Scroll with the arrow key / filter button to advance through the 7 days of history. Press the arrow down / info button to display the filters performed, bypassed, and the average number of filters per cook cycle for the chosen day. L and R in the display indicate data from a split vat. Press the X2 button to return the controller to off. To see error codes, which can point to root causes or recurring problems, press and hold at the same time the Temp and Info buttons. When the left screen displays Level 2, release the buttons. Enter code scrolls on the left. Enter 1, 2, 3, 4. Prod comp is displayed. Press the down / info button to display E-log on the left. Press the check mark under the 1 button. Now is displayed. Press the down / info button to scroll through the recorded errors. The errors, if any, are labeled A through J. A total of 10 are kept. R or L in the display indicates the site of a split that experienced the error. Use the error log matrix to decipher the error code. Press the 2 / X button to return the controller to off. On the 3000 series controller, with the controller displaying on or off, press and hold the checkmark button until info mode is displayed. Press the right pointing arrow on the left side of the controller to scroll to the daily stats. Press the checkmark button. Press the right arrow until filter appears. Scroll with the arrow keys under the right display through the 7 days of data and the number of filters performed each day. Press the right arrow again to show filters performed on the prior week. Press the right arrow again to show filters bypassed during the current week. Press the Exit Scan button twice to turn the controller off. To record error logs with the controller off, press and hold the checkmark until the controller scrolls Info mode, changing to menu, Product Setup. Release. Press the right arrow under the Product Setup and scroll to VAT Setup and Release. Press the checkmark. Enter code 1656. System is displayed. Press the right arrow key to scroll to E-logs. Press the check mark. Now is displayed. Press the right arrow key and coded errors are displayed. Press the right arrow to advance through the captured errors. Write the errors on the form. Press the Exit Scan button 3 times to return the controller to off. With the touchscreen-based 4000 controller on, press the Home key and then the question mark key. Press the Filter icon button. Tap the box for any of the displayed 7 days. Filter data is shown. Scroll up and down the displayed data with the left arrow keys. Scroll through the days, collecting the number of skipped filters. Use the left arrow key to return the controller to regular operation. To see the error log, navigate to the crew screen by pressing the Home key. Tap the Service icon. Tap the Manager icon. Enter 1656 on the keyboard. Press the check mark. Tap E-log. The errors are displayed with the last one at the top. Scroll error entries with the up and down arrow keys. Use the error log form to decipher the code. Not all errors are indicative of a fryer problem. For example, a fryer that's not connected to gas will record an ignition error in the error log. Use the back arrow to return the screen to the crew or cooking screen.
All right, that there. All these videos, like I said, that's online. That's on YouTube. So if you need to reference those, you can get them from there. Make sure, as far as the stats go, error logs. I mean, I don't see anybody, that's using the fryer would probably need them. It's not going to hurt if they want to check them. And then, of course, to decipher those. I mean, we have the matrices and stuff that you can get online. The managers, though, in your training, I would make sure that they know, if we can get them on board, to check those filter stats. I guarantee, okay, our success of these things working is going to greatly improve. Because right now, they go on what they're being told, and it happens all the time. I don't think anybody's intentionally being deceitful, but it comes up, and it's like, they probably don't even remember, half the times whenever they hit no or yes. I mean, it's just automatic at that point. All right, but if we can go ahead and capture that information,
Frymaster,
it's very helpful. Okay, these are the forms that they were talking about. We showed them a couple of times here. Right now, though, the filter stat ones, instead of having it a big booklet that had the error logs and the filter stats, we broke it down to where it just has the stats on it now. In the classes I give, I make sure everybody has these. The tech reference manual that we use during these classes that you can get online, you can download it online. That tech reference manual has these sheets in it. Okay, it didn't have the touch screen in. For whatever reason, we didn't include it, but we update that every year. It will have it in there after this. But these two here, the ones that we have the most of out there right now, it does have the filter stats in it. One thing about the filter stats is it only holds the stats for the last 7 days. So if you go out there to work on a filter system and they say, well, this thing hasn't worked in 2 weeks, filter stats aren't going to give you a whole lot of information, because if it hasn't been working, they haven't been filtering. All right. A couple years ago now, time goes by so quick. I guess it's been about 3 years ago. I had to go to New York. It was one of those days you come to work, you think you're going to be here by lunchtime, but you're on a plane instead. But anyway, because they had an issue with a very high volume store in a certain chain that I deal with. And it got to the point we were already over $10,000 in service on this, and this fryer was only 3 months old. All right, but this is what we found when I got there. This was oil that was brand new that day. It was brand new. Like I said, debris that stays down in here, okay, is going to continue to cook. Look at what this stuff looks like. I mean, it looks like coal. It looks like bits of coal. It gets so black during the day. This store was changing their shortening twice a day on their busiest days because it looks so bad. All right. The same oil that was in this fryer that resulted in this right here, okay, I filtered that. Once we got this thing all cleaned out, I filtered that, okay, and they used that oil for 4 days afterwards, and they were filtering as they go. This store here in that chain, I'm not going to mention the chain, but and this chain here was the #1 store. Okay, it doubled the closest, the #2 position. It doubled their sales. All right, they didn't have any more fryers than a typical store did. And once I was there, the whole time I was there, we never missed a filter one time. And I was there for a week. Okay, well, almost a whole week. By the time we got this thing cleaned out and I just stuck around with it, they never missed a filter. If they can filter, I guarantee I've never seen a restaurant in any chain as busy as this one was. But if they can filter every time, anybody can. All right. Their cost, they were changing oil sometimes twice a day. Their oil savings, the oil was now lasting over a week. All right. Can you imagine how much oil savings they had? That manager, when I run into him, certain time, every other year or so, there's a convention or something that I see him. He comes up to me all the time to just tell me how much money he saves with this. He's a manager. A big chunk of his salary is based on bonus. All right. So this give him a pay raise. He can walk up to a fryer and check those filter stats at any given moment. He knows how to do it by heart. All right. But this was just one that, we had. Like I said, this is the stuff that, when we drained it down, this is what we had that was in there. The debris in some of these fryers, this one here shows it after it's been drained down. The debris was up to here. All right. The baskets was actually sitting on the debris that was in there. And all this is because they didn't filter. What was the response they gave? Well, we filter when it tells us to 47 times. Okay. The last time this fryer had worked 2 days prior, before this fryer went down, they had bypassed filter 47 times. All right. So when they found out, when the manager found out, okay, how many times they were, I mean, he was just basing on everything that he was being told. All right, when he found that out, he was a stickler to make sure that this thing was filtered every time. All right, and again, it improved the quality of the food. Look, could you imagine what the stuff looks like coming out of there? That's why they were changing, because they really were, they wanted good quality stuff. So, they wanted to do right, but that's why they were changing oil twice a day. But even with that, this is still what happens by the end of the day. This oil was brand new that day. All right. And I don't remember what time this was taken here, but it was towards the end of their shift. But still, that happened in one day. All right. Some of the things that's going to happen if they choose not to filter. All right. One is you're going to get clogs. The clog that you're going to see, okay, there's an elbow in the back of these fryers. The design of the fry pot is you have that little trench in the middle. It's a very small area. We don't want to refer to it as a cold zone, but all that debris is going to go down there and be ready to be flushed out of there. So it's a great design to have that. Whenever this valve opens, and we'll talk about this stuff a lot more tomorrow, but whenever this valve opens, that oil is going to flush through here and flush out all that debris that is down there where it needs to be flushed out. The problem comes is when they don't flush out that debris and let it build up. That's when this elbow here starts to clog. This elbow down here can clog also because this is the return valve. This is the valve that opens to have the top off system, or the oil from the top off, come through. That top off isn't strong enough to flush all this out. So when that valve opened, that debris could just drop back down in here. All right. But again, none of that would happen if we filter when we're supposed to. Having this information on these filter stats is very, very strong information. And once it starts resulting in repairs that are just completely not necessary, all right, then it starts to get people's attention. Not only are they not saving the money that they expected to when they buy these fryers, they're also, now it's costing them more because they have somebody coming out there all the time to clean out the fryers. All right. All that can be eliminated just by filtering when it tells us to. Another thing that can happen is that debris could end up getting built up into the pump. Okay. This new oil that we have, and I could just imagine how sticky this stuff is. You guys have all seen this before. That new oil, once it gets hot and then cools down, it gets extremely sticky. It clings to anything that's hot. Like this right here is an OIB sensor, which is basically a heater, which we'll talk about on Thursday. But that sensor right there is a heater. Look at all the carbon buildup on that. All right. That's because anything that's hot, that new oil, that zero trans fat oil, sticks to. Okay. So inside this pump here, if we allow debris to get in there, and then once it cools down, even if that oil was filtered properly, If it cools down, if it sits long enough. Now I'm talking a long time, which now during this time here with some restaurants it's closed. I mean, we may have an issue with that when we start out, but we have like training equipment that sometimes will sit for 2, 3 months. I've had it before where I had to tear the pump apart just to free this up. Okay. So we need to make sure that all this debris and stuff like this doesn't get in there. If we have an issue where they're not filtering, debris does get into the pump, we need to break away from the habit of changing the pump and motor. When they came out with this new oil, we had an issue. Well, the pump companies that we use had an issue where the seals were breaking down. All right, and then they were leaking, and then that resulted in oil getting into the motor. So the pump and motor had to be changed. That was going on for 2 or 3 years. Okay. And it's been a while ago and we had this problem corrected, but people are still in the mindset of changing the pump and motor. We don't want to do that because that's very expensive parts. Not to mention if the reason why we're changing the pump and motor is because they're not filtering, we have the filter stats that prove it. The customer is then going to get billed for that. Now, that's a $2,000 bill. Okay. Completely not necessary. But accidents sometimes happen. If we find that the pump motor doesn't come on, usually it tries to come on, you just hear that humming noise, and it'll trip the overload. Normally that means that there's something in the pump. We have a video that we put together for this, okay, where I took a fryer that wasn't the easiest fryer to work on. I mean, we don't try to do that. Try to get one that's a little bit more challenging, but we picked a fryer and we just show here how we can clean the pump out. This whole process didn't take that long. Now, granted, if you're in a store and you got to try to pull the fryer out, things take longer. Don't get me wrong. I know that. I mean, but the thing of it is, here is just the basic concept of checking the pump.
Filter pumps are often unnecessarily replaced, and often with a functioning motor. The problem is usually debris in the pump. Remove the pump and clear the debris on calls reporting a failed pump. The pump is accessible at the back of the fryer. Remove the back panels. The pump visible here is held to the motor with 4 bolts. 2 go through a shipping brace, which can be removed and discarded. Remove the bolts holding the brace to the fryer cabinet. Remove the bolts holding the brace to the pump. Remove the flex lines attaching the pump assembly to the manifold. Remove the other bolts attaching the pump to the motor. Remove the valve actuator if necessary to clear a path for the pump's removal. Remove the pump. Remove the nipple on the filter pan side of the pump. Inspect the port for debris. It takes very little debris to clog a gear pump. Use a screwdriver to dig out debris in the port. Use a wrench to turn the tang of the pump, which rotates the gears inside. More debris may be pushed out. Turn the tang by hand to ensure the gears move freely. Reposition the pump. Tighten the bolts holding the pump to the motor in an alternating pattern. Reattach the flex line attaching the pump to the manifold. Reposition the nipple to connect the flex line to the filter pan. Return the filter pan flex line to the nipple. Return the valve actuator. Ensure the filter pan is clean and reposition it in the fryer. On automatic filtering fryers, it will be necessary to run the filter with the controller, or in this case, the manual interface board, or MIB. Remove the cover over the MIB. It's held at the bottom with a torque screw. Here's an annotated view of the MIB. Bottom left is pressed for manual operation. Top left, under the display, is pressed to choose the vat to be drained. Top right is pressed to drain oil into the pan. Bottom right is pressed to open and close return valves. Press and hold bottom right to run filter with drain open or refill vat with drain closed. Follow these steps to drain and return oil to the fry pot. Press the M button to put the MIB in manual mode. Navigate to the vat you want to move oil in with the numbered button. Open the drain valve with the top right button. Oil drains into the filter pan. Press the return button to open the return valve and turn on the pump. Oil should flow through the fry pot. Press the upper drain button to close the drain. Press and hold the return button to refill the vat. Allow air to bubble into the vat, ensuring the return lines are cleared of oil. Return the MIB cover and the fryers back. Return the fryer to service.
All right. Yeah, that video again is online or on YouTube, and that's pretty standard on all the love fryers and the filter quick. I mean, it's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to get that motor out, because as you can see, you didn't have to take the motor out. That's the big part. Getting the pump off isn't that bad, but clearing those out, there's a lot of these pumps and motors that we get back. And it's exactly what we just did right there. Just a little bit of debris in there, and that's it. Motors, they work flawless. Nothing wrong with them. But the thing of it is, when the pump's mounted on there, to overcome that, it's, obviously got a start capacitor in there. All motors, need that little extra oomph to go ahead and get them going. But if you got that clog in there, or just a little bit of debris, I mean, there's not that much in there, but just that little bit, it can't get over that. Once you free it up and turn it, and that's why I said on there when I was spinning that, make sure you can spin it with your hand, okay, and then put it back on there. And if you can do that, I mean, it's working. Because when we get those back and they're not working, they started pushing back on those because they're such expensive costs. And let's be honest, everybody that's just now listened to all this, all of that stuff is 100% preventable. I mean, it's just wasted money. And okay, we definitely want to avoid that. Just real quick, this here is a schematic. We're going to go over this a lot more tomorrow and Thursday. We're going to talk about the ATO systems. We're going to talk about, how the filter system works and all the automation here. These are the drain valves. They have actuators on them, the return valves. Just because this is filtration, I want to mention that bulk oil is very popular, okay, and for good reasons. It's safe. Okay, it's a lot cleaner because disposing oil and things like that, you don't need extra equipment to put the oil in to take it outside. So you're not transporting hot oil or anything like that. Bulk oil is a good idea. All right, it works great. But we're going to cover that between tomorrow and Thursday. But just know that bulk oil exists. Whenever you have a fryer, the automatic fryers, we have to make sure that in setup, okay, that we tell it that it is hooked to a bulk system. Because if we don't, it won't work when it comes to disposing and stuff. We'll get into this a little bit more, but I just wanted to go ahead and mention it now because this is a filtration course, but we need to make sure that we set the fryers up for bulk. We'll go into that in a lot more detail. One of the things that we have added to all the touchscreen fryers is this clean out. A lot of people are like, oh, we fixed our problem now, no more filter issues. That's not necessarily the case because now we just have people cleaning this out every single day. This will result in the same issues. The oil's not going to come back into the fryer. And there's been thousands of dollars spent going out cleaning this out. We even have a wrench on here that tells, so it's there to take this off, okay? This right here, I'm just going to mention it. This is another course as well. The OQS is the oil quality sensor. It's a built-in sensor, okay, in the fryers that tells you when the oil is bad. There are some countries that if the oil is expired, meaning that the level of contaminants in there is too great, okay, you get big fines and it shuts your restaurant down. That's where this came from, because this will actually lock the fryer out and won't allow you to use it, okay, until you clean that oil and it senses that. All right, we have a lot of chains that do use that. Any fryer that had that on there got this pre-filter, but now the touchscreens all have it as well. So, all right, that's our time. We're just a minute over. I'm going to stick around a little bit. The MIB, anybody on here that works on these fryers and you don't know how to use that, please tune in. We're going to go over that mostly on Thursday. Okay, we'll make mention of a little bit tomorrow and stuff, but Thursday is the day that we're going to cover that in detail. I can tell you, if you work on these fryers and you don't know how to use that, your life will be a lot easier once you do learn how to use it. But anyway, that's going to be later on. That's our time for now, so we're going to go ahead and log on. I will stay on here a little bit